Warning, this show contains adult content, so viewer and listener discretion is advised. Welcome to another edition of Up and In It. I'm your host, Adrian Babashoff, and if you're new here, welcome as well. And if you're wondering what the show is about, it's entirely dedicated to improving quality of life for both people and planet through liberation and independence, moving you from surviving to thriving and living life raw. All right, we got all that out of the way. We're also we're recording this in my mobile studio, my F-350 diesel pickup truck. So that's the noise in the background. We're very busy trying to get stuff planted for the season before springtime comes. So we're making shorter episodes here. And this is episode 164, by the way. And this is the green thumb myth. Being that I'm into growing a lot of my own food and teaching others how to grow my own food and building a farm here, I thought I would talk about some stuff that I'm actually doing right now. And I really wanted to talk to you guys today because I'm doing a series of films, right? And I'm going to put these films on my biodegradable container gardening at YouTube channel. And we're working up to get a website as well, biodegradablecontainergardening.com. And I've been finding a lot of people who are scared to grow their own food because they're scared of screwing up. And there's a lot of mythology out there on how to grow food. And that's kind of what I want to tackle today. Because a lot of the people I'm meeting, I'm doing live videos on their actual properties of their gardens and just kind of talking about what they're doing, what their struggles and their successes were. And that's some of the subject matter that came up with this myth. I never even knew that it existed. I knew that, that it actually existed. I just didn't know it was coined as the myth of having a green thumb. For those of you who don't know what a green thumb is, it just means that somebody who's just magically able to put seeds in the ground and everything goes absolutely perfect. Nope, it's not the case when you start doing it yourself or talking to even professionals. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen in order for you to get triumphant in growing your own food. So a lot of it's opinion-based, I think. There's a lot of stuff out there that, for instance, if you're growing seeds, was on one of the videos I seen, they were saying that you should not put nutrients in your seedling pots. Your seedlings don't need nutrients. In fact, it'll make them weak sometimes. There's actually a name for it. I forget what it was. I don't really adhere to it. I respect the ideas, the ideologies, and the things that people have, but I don't really buy into it 100%. I always leave things open, though. You never know. But here's what my opinion is. Nature is nature. And when a plant goes into the ground, a seed rather, and it pops up, it needs photosynthesis. It needs light from the sun, right? So there's some people saying that the very first leaves that pop out of the actual seed capsule, that they don't really do anything. I kind of look at this and go, well, again, respectfully, maybe it's true. I don't know. Maybe they hooked up some diodes or some stuff to the plant and talked to the plant, and the plant told them, hey, this is not what we do. I don't know. But nature has its way of doing things, and I think there's a reason that when that leaf pops up and it's green and it's all set up for to get photosynthesis to create sugars and stuff like that for it to feed itself, it has a plan. So a lot of us try to manipulate nature. We're going to get a little bit into some things with animals on that a little bit later here. But if we observe nature and let it do what it's got to do, I think we're going to be a lot more successful. Will some things die? I think, yeah, some things will die. That's what happens in nature. It's natural selection. And we're going to talk about that as well, about weaknesses and things that are growing. So, but let's just kind of look at, like, if we were watching a plant, a seed, and we put it in the ground, and for no particular reason, the leaves come up, they're not doing anything. Then it shoots off its new leaves, and those are supposedly the ones that start to create photosynthesis. And then going back to the nutrients in the soil, root goes down to do what? To find water, right? Immediately. So we had the pod, right? The baby. First thing that comes down usually is a taproot. The roots start to go down. They let off a bunch of fingers, and they're in search. This is kind of like the digesters, the mouths. And to actually establish the seed so the seed doesn't blow away, it anchors it. And at the same time, or maybe a little bit later, the leaves will start popping up, the shoots. So to me, here's a seed. Here's something that's being born into this earth, and it's looking to immediately start to feed. When we look at and animals and plants aren't quite so different in a lot of different ways. on a side shoot, I know that animals talk, and I'm sorry, that plants actually have a language amongst them. It's just something maybe different that we can't comprehend. There's scientific backing if you need that. They let go of pheromones, of scents and stuff to attract other insects and things like that, and let each other know that, hey, there's some predators here. There's a fungal network underground where they symbiotically exchange, like mushrooms will send a taproot down like 40 feet in the ground and pull up water and grab and take sugar from certain plants in exchange, looking, hey, I'll give you some sugar if you give me some water. Or, I'm sorry, I'll give you some water, the mushrooms are saying, and in exchange you give me some sugar, let me feed off you. So it's a pretty beautiful thing. There's actually a tobacco plant that will change its flower within 24 hours. So if you were walking, it's the actual tobacco plant too, where the tobacco will derive from. You'll pass by this plant in a day, and the next day when you come, you wouldn't even recognize it. It changes its flower that fast. That's the intelligence of this plant. So I think that we should respect plants just like we do people and animals, to trust in them that they know what they're doing, and not try to mimic things. For instance, I saw one thing on seedlings. People are growing them inside a basement, indoors, with this artificial light, and then they said put a fan on it so that the plants can wiggle around so that it gets exercise, so that the stem is nice and strong instead of really weak. And you need to mimic the wind. So I understand those things, but I think that we should grow our plants, let live what wants to live, and let die what wants to die right off the bat, because otherwise we're just making a lot of work for ourselves. It's a lot easier to put a seed, another seed in the ground or inside of a pot or a soil cube, whatever way you're growing them, to start over that way, than to sit there and tend to that plant or that tree for months, weeks. You see where I'm going. So that's what I wanted to say, that basically in a nutshell, is that these plants, that's the way they grow in my opinion. I think we should trust in them. Next is on this gardening, the green thumb myth, is the regionally adapted plants and seeds. So we have places like here in the United States where in the West Coast is a lot different than the East Coast. So I've talked about this before, where mama plants, papa plants, some of them are, I don't know why people have to distinguish stuff as male and fucking female. A lot of plants are actually hermaphrodites. They're both male and female. Tomatoes, for instance, they have male flowers and female flowers. So I don't know what you'd call that, a he, she? I don't know. But point is that a lot of this information, because everything wants to live, the plant itself will encode the seeds with this information, such as drought or frosts or whatever it needs to survive, right? It wants to live. So these seeds that you will get from, say, the East Coast and you bring to the West Coast and vice versa, they won't actually work a lot of the times. So this green thumb myth is that I did everything right, I planted the seeds in the ground, they popped and they all just died first frost or first heat, they bolted or whatever. So that's a lesson right there, is that a lot of stuff, trees, I mean, for instance, in tropical fruits, when they give seeds, it's almost impossible to save the seeds. Because the tropics never get cold, those seeds are designed and encoded with information to instantly start to, maybe not instantly all of them, but to start growing as soon as possible. So what we get is that when you try to transport, say, these papaya seeds and things like that, kiwi seeds from other regions, most of the time they won't survive. The seeds will actually almost self-destruct. So very interesting things there. And so they're regionally adapted. That's what we have continuously going from the point, if you did get success from growing something from East Coast all the way on the West Coast, maybe you'd have a few that would live. They would immediately start to encode their seeds, their babies, with this information. Look, shit's changed up, man. We got to go. We got to start doing things different here. So, and then you slowly would start adapting those plants to be in your region, your biome. So we're continually doing this, I think, when we're gardening or farming. If we keep the seeds and we keep these genetics going for your region, sooner or later, from pests and things like this is actually true. I want you guys, Joseph Lofthouse is the name of the fella. He's on Facebook. You can look him up, Joseph Lofthouse, L-O-F-T, and then house at the end. He's actually writing a book about land racing, and I speak about this a lot because I follow this guy's work, and I'd love to get him on the show one of these days if he would like to. He doesn't know I'm promoting him, but yeah, you can go see. He's writing a whole book about the situation that I'm talking about. God, I'd love to blabber my fucking mouth off more, but I got to shorten these shows. So why do things die? Is next here. Things die just because of the things that we were saying, that maybe they were brought, these seeds aren't regionally adapted. These plants don't know what's going on in your region. Other things is just that some seeds are just weak. If we look at, if those of you who've ever raised chickens, horses, animals, or even if we look at babies, sometimes we get human babies. Sometimes we get deformities and we get different things. And in the animal kingdom, I guess it's a lot more cruel, or less, it's cruel to put these things out in contrast to plants. You know, plants, we just snip them off and kill them. You know, but I kind of see this as the problem that a lot of people get, why they're having to do all this work, is because they have something that's just not really wanting to live. So there's a lot of reasons. There could be your soil is all screwed up. You've got a lot of, maybe somebody dumped some oil in that region, or maybe they were building housing tracts and they scraped all the topsoil off to get this place level, and all that nutrient-rich soil is all gone. So for those of you who don't understand, you go a couple feet down, a lot, like a hill, for instance, just 3 feet down, that soil's never seen sun or anything in many decades, if not millenniums. So then that soil, that's where all the microbiology is, at the edge of everything, as we like to teach, borrowing from permaculture. Most diversity in life and anything is at the edge. It's at the edge of the soil. Just a few inches down is where we get all the microbiology, and right at the top, right at the edge where it meets the light and the air, there's a whole nother biodiversity there. In the edges of a pond, north side, south side, east side, west side, there's diversity. There's different things that will grow there. Right where a forest meets a meadow, there's a lot of diversity right in that edge. So it could be a reason why a lot of things are dying. There's multiple things. It's not your fault. You just need to keep trying. To me, to give you guys some answers, that's why I do container gardening, because you never know what you're going to get. In your soil, talking about that, right reasons things will die is you can find out what's going on with your soil by indigenous weeds that are growing. And you'll see like an ocean. You'll see different colors of different species of stuff growing. You'll see like a wave, like a shoreline of where stuff will live and where stuff won't live. So that's a good indicator of where these edges and these pockets of soils and stuff are. So it's best to, if you're relying on this for some serious food production, it's best to just start growing in containers as your reliable source, and then go out and start farming your own soil just as an experiment to see where things will go. Harvest what makes it, and whatever doesn't, mark down those areas and work from there. So why do things live? It's because they're fully adaptive. They're very strong. I think gardening frustrates a lot of us nowadays because we're like, we want everything so quick, and I think it's only getting worse. A lot of us through cell phones and things like that, we want to send an email, you push a couple buttons, bam, it's gone. You have an illness, you go to the doctor, they give you some medicine, bam, your illness is gone within a few days. This doesn't happen with gardening really, unless you do a lot of work. It takes time for these years, for these things to breed your own plants, to find out what's living, why it lives, and why it wants to die. So you've got to take your time. Nature just doesn't happen overnight. And I think there's a good lesson for us to learn from that. And which reminds me, I haven't done a show on lessons from nature in a long time, but I guess this one sort of is. So, hey, we're stacking functions, another thing in permaculture. We're doing two things at once. All right, so indigenous and invasive species. I wanted to talk to you guys about this a little bit. And this is a good way to find out what's going to grow in your region. But to talk about invasive species first is that there's different parts of the region. A bird, say like a very good one, would probably be geese, that they would forage and they'd eat some food. The geese fly south for the winter, so they got these seeds inside their intestines and they go way over, let's say from California to Mexico. And then next thing you know, they're pooping in the field. And then you got tomatoes growing, and you got the stuff that's never been there before. And then what happens is many of the seeds that were carried by these animals will die because they're not ready there, and they have nobody to tend to them like us with tomatoes and our garden stuff. So they'll die, they'll pass away. Whereas some stuff will just go, whoa, this is really good, and they'll actually start to proliferate. So is it an invasive species? To me, in my opinion, I would say no. There are places in the world where things just take over almost everything. But I think that there'll be a time where things start to regulate. There's a reason why that plant was able to, and sooner or later, through the wind, through animals or something's going to happen and throw things kind of off balance. And I think nature likes change up. Things need to change all the time. So I kind of don't know if I buy into the invasive species thing. Indigenous now is maybe even some of these invasive species that come in. What we could do is we can mimic this. So a lot of plants, for a lot of you guys who don't know, come from the same type of family. You can look at the Latin name. The first name is the plant. The second name, the Latin part, is actually the family. And I forget, Oseasis or something like that. The brassica, the cabbage families. If you look at that, it'll be at the end, they'll be like kale, Oseasis, but I'm just making shit up here. And then you look at cabbage, Oseasis. It comes from the same gene. So that's why they did that kind of stuff. So if you see indigenous things growing in your region, you can find other stuff that has that same genetics, and you can actually start growing those with the least amount of effort, in my opinion. So that's how we take some stuff, we mimic the indigenous, and go on from there and move forward. I want to tell you guys a story about fish fry I learned in the aquaponics industry. Hopefully I'm not getting in trouble here. But in aquaponics, we grow, we breed fish, and then we grow them, we put plants in the water, and we grow them symbiotically. The fish poop, and the plants eat the poop as nutrients, and then clean up the water, and the fish have clean water. So throughout over the world, a lot of our mentality, which I think we got to get rid of, is that we're all about cleanliness. And in nature, that doesn't really work all the time. For instance, I've learned, it's said by science, that there's enough bacteria in a human body, if we hollowed out one of your legs, to physically fill up the whole entire thing. That's how much bacteria you got living. There's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria. Another science thing that they're saying is that this bacteria, when a baby is born, the best thing to do instead of a sterile environment is to pass on your bacteria to this person, to your baby. Your baby will absorb this through the skin and things like that. Of course, you don't want bad bacteria like fecal matter and stuff like that, but there's this good bacteria with your hands, like your from the mother's vagina. When it comes out, it gets the juices and the blood and the things all over itself, and it's absorbing. It's getting instantly, just like we said with a seed. A human baby, is instantly out of its mother's womb and is starting to absorb things and information to get it ready for life. So, interesting in breeding tilapia, we all have this thing where we want to keep everything clean. So you look in the waters where they're breeding fish fry, which is baby fish, the eggs and stuff like that, they extract from the mother, and they'll put them in this pristine, clear water. And they'll get like 70% of them will die, and only a few will live. Whereas on the other side, what some people do is they get themselves a big, giant doughboy swimming pool, right? A big above ground pool. They'll place a net on the bottom, and then they'll just let the algae and everything form in there, and they'll just throw some males and female fish in there and let them breed. They'll keep a close eye, and once the tilapia fish fry are hatched, they'll pull up the net. The babies will be stuck in the water, and they'll take the parent fish out, and so that the males don't eat the baby fish, which I believe, if memory serves me correct. Cool fact about tilapia is the mother will actually scoop the babies in her mouth and to protect them, and then open up her mouth and they'll all come out. She'll store them there in her mouth. Whereas I think the males will actually go and eat them. So fucking males. So what they found though is that these babies, they fish in the dirty water with algae, because that's a lot of what tilapia will feed on. When they're in there breathing, right, the water comes in and out, the algae will go inside to the mouth and then out of the mouth, inside the mouth, out the mouth. And what happens is the babies start to kind of chew on this stuff and go, and then they start to eat it. So it's almost like they're being trained how to eat. Not almost. I guess that's the premise of it, is that a lot of these fish in sterile environments, pristine, clear water, they don't have that algae, they don't have the food, so they don't have the know-how to feed themselves. So I think they starve to death, which is pretty sad. But look how interesting that is, from going from complete cleanliness to just complete dirty. Just let that shit cake up all the green algae and everything in the water. It's all cloudy, and yet they get like 95% success rate, way more. So that's like a lesson I think that we should heed in nature, from nature, and from growing our own food to even having our own babies. I think this lesson goes really, really far. And I think this is what we have, the weakening of species across the board, of human beings, of plants. And I want to talk about the danger of this. So what we have is a lot of people, let's go with people first, and I'm going to try to make this as short as possible. A lot of people live with central heating and cooling in their homes. They've never been exposed to the weather, they don't even have like an entire day of being like, damn, it is cold. Most people, they get in their vehicles, which are heated and cooled as well. The only time they're in the natural environment in nature is when they're walking from their car to their office, right? A lot of people who work in their homes, they hardly ever spend more than a few minutes outside. And it's the same with our plants. Our plants are grown in these large factories, and they're mimicked with fans and artificial lights and things like that. They're never attacked. They're never put out of their comfort zone. And we're weaker as a species across the board. And this is very dangerous. This is why I think a lot of our foods, our plants are failing, because genetically, as we keep breeding them and entering into the sterile environment, and then placing them out in the dirty natural environment, of course, what do you think was going to happen? So I look at this with both people, plants, animals. Unfortunately, we can't do this with people, but with animals and plants, I think that we need to let the Mother Nature just take over and kill what wants to die, or what can't live. And I know it sounds very cruel, but it seems more cruel to me. This one will probably disturb a lot of people, so it's not my intention to disturb people. I just want you to follow the philosophy. I'm not saying we should go kill a bunch of animals either. I'm just saying if we leave things alone, and if you observe nature and let it do its thing, that it's less cruel to let a few plants and animals die off than to have an entire herd, hundreds of thousands of sick animals, sick plants that are trying to live and just can't. And then if something ever happened to you, especially with animals, and I feel the same way about plants though, something happened to you where you weren't able to tend to them and they all slowly start to die away, a very painful death. And this will continue. And this is in the human species, in my opinion, as well, is this is what we're going to have in the future. We keep breeding, we have weak genetics. A lot of us aren't exposed. We're not exposing our children to bacteria. We're not exposing them just out to nature. And this could be a very dangerous game. And I think we're making ourselves more susceptible to viruses and sicknesses and illnesses. Same thing with our plants. And the way to do that is for us to get our shit together and start getting dirty, I guess. Let's get dirty, guys. Get out there and fuck shit up. So that's the show, guys. I hope that has helped you. If it did, please like and subscribe, all that kind of stuff there. If you guys can review the podcast, that it's going to help the show out tremendously. So do that if you like it. You can also, if you have questions, you want to let me know I'm full of shit, or maybe I'm too cruel with what I said today, text me, or email me. It's upandinitshow@gmail.com. That's in the descriptions below or above or wherever I'm posting this at. And you get a hold of me and tell me what your opinions are. I want to know what you think. Show me your philosophies or your science of things and your thoughts into stuff, and maybe I'll convert over to what you're doing, and I'll share it with everybody if it makes enough sense. So I think we should be free enough to be able to present new things to each other without getting pissed off. So that's the show, guys. It's Up and In It. You can check it out on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and anywhere where they allow me to post this crazy ass shit. So as I always say, guys, go out there and have yourself a near-life experience. Don't lose your muchness. Carry on the fire. Hume it up. Live it, love it, own it. And bone it, my friends.